Can I say something right quick, son?
Absolutely.
More. You said life happens, and some people are saying some things you can't plan for, like a hurricane, like uh, the collapse of the empire. So, what do you say to that? And I'm going to leave time for question and answers too. But what do you say to that? They're saying some things you can't prepare for.
That's true. That's why I say uh, prepare for the unexpected.
Mm.
Something you never know what's going to happen in life. So now, obviously, like you said, it's hard to predict a hurricane or a tsunami or a tornado, whatever, any type of
Mm-hmm.
exactly. But now you can predict a collapse, especially if you're paying attention, right?
Mm.
There are things that you can control. There are controllables and non-controllables.
Okay.
Control what you can control, and then be prepared, but don't worry about things that are out of your control. Right now, this is where we go into the spiritual aspect of things. If you believe in a higher power, at times in life, you have to leave things to the higher power and expect that things will be okay. But worrying about things doesn't change anything. Right. So you prepare for what you can. And I say, uh, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. You know, be prepared because whatever happens, it's going to happen to you.
I remember you were saying, life happens, things happen, and yes, things are going to get better. And I remember telling you, like, before, like around 2017, I was like, oh, we don't have to worry about everything. NASARA's coming, National Economic Security Reformation Act, and the global version of that, just SARA is going to happen. We're all going to be wealthy. All the debts are going to be paid. We're going to have a wonderful jubilee. And I'm like, Trump is going to save the world. And I'm just, happy. And you said, Mom, I study economics. I appreciate the fact that you're positive. I study economics and I foresee a collapse. We are going to have to prepare for things getting worse before they get better. I remember you saying that.
Mm-hmm.
Then a couple years later, it started getting worse and worse and worse. And then we had 2020, we had a global shutdown, right?
Yep.
And you said, had you not been prepared, we would have been struggling. But I told you things were going to get worse before they got better. It just so happened that we all moved in together because we were talking about, things could get worse. We all moved in together. We started saving money. We didn't have to pay all these different rents and mortgages. Dad had a house. Okay. We started pulling our resources, our money. I started getting that's when I started getting into silver and gold. And, we just started making decisions based on what you had learned in economics. So I'm very grateful that you kept me grounded.
Absolutely.
I'm a very joyful, positive person, but you said, Mom, you got to be grounded, realistic. And you also said you can predict what happens in the future based on what happened in the past. And you are also studying history as well as economics.
Right. They say if you don't know history, then you're bound to make the same mistakes as before.
Yes.
So for one, you can assess where things are headed if you know the history of how we got to the present, right?
Yeah.
Past, present, future.
Mm.
A lot of times people want to look at the future with no understanding of how we got to where we are.
Right.
So whatever your expectation of the future is ill-informed or misinformed.
Mm.
All right. Let's go down the road of what if things happen the way that you said, right? Everybody's prosperous. Wonderful. But what happens, right? What happens to people who win the lottery?
Oh, they usually lose it.
In a matter of under 3 years, generally.
Gosh. Okay.
What happens to professional athletes that come across millions of dollars who have no education in money? They lose it.
Lose it.
They end up right back in the projects often. Well, I mean, unfortunate, but it is what it is. They end up right back living with their mama. They have to sell because when you don't understand money, then you waste it.
Hey, what's wrong with living with your mama? No, I'm just kidding.
Nothing. Nothing at all. I love my mama. I enjoyed the times when I lived with my mama. But
You're
at
welcome.
at a certain point in life, you do want to have things of your own, especially if you ran across several millions of dollars.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's when you don't want to live with your mama, when you
Right.
burnt all of your money. But right, so people are, if you don't know money, then you're going to spend it frivolously,
Okay.
just like the athletes do. They get the money and they spend the money before the season starts. A
So you
lot of
said
the athletes, go ahead.
what happened if everybody became wealthy and prosperous during that time? Like I said.
They would lose their money
Mm.
because they would spend it on things that are don't have the proper value. People weren't going to invest in gold and silver at the time. Do you expect?
No, no, not before the collapse. Nobody was talking about it.
Exactly. So how would they have spent their money?
Mm. They would have been wasting it like we did with a lot of people did with stimulus checks. Some did pay their
Part
bills, but a lot of them, you know, stimulus
party. Mm-hmm.
and those other checks that they gave to businesses. I forgot the name of those checks.
PPP loans.
Yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Blow it. We blowed our money. And the thing is, okay, if you get $1 million, immediately your mentality changes, your perspective changes,
Mm.
right? But who you are, your spending habits don't change.
Mm.
But now your desires increase. You get $1 million, you don't want a Toyota Camry. You want a Ferrari because in your mind you can afford it. $500,000 on that. You want a house, not a $200,000 house. You want $1 million house or better. So you're spending all of this money, and then you realize that you already spent it all. And then you end up losing it all because most people are not buying things outright.
Right,
Even
right.
rich people,
Mm.
right? They'll get a car and a house on a loan and have to pay 5 years on that car, 30 years on the house. What happens if you run into hard times 3 years into your car note?
Mm.
Well, the car dealership's not going to say we understand that you're having hard times. They might give you a month or maybe up to 3 months. But eventually they're going to come calling. They're going to say, look, we're going to collect on that car.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to kick you out of that house. The bank will repossess the house.
Mm.
And so a lot of times in life, God gives us what we need.
Mm.
Uh, America has to go through its day of reckoning. America can't just be the way that it dominated the world through its military.
Mm.
The country, in my eyes, cannot just turn around and reap prosperity, even its citizens,
Mm.
because the scriptures say the sins of the father will be visited on the children.
Mm.
And so this is just reality, right? But
Mm-hmm.
now, again, we can prepare ourselves. I saw one of the commentators mention copper. Copper is obviously a sound investment, right? Copper is used in many ways, right? There is again a fixed amount of every resource, every asset. There is an amount in the grounds, whether we're talking about copper, gold, silver, oil, whatever. And then there's an amount that we take out of the ground, and that fixed amount is going to determine the prices, right? And if everybody's grabbing for these resources, there's a high demand. You want
Mm.
to find things to invest in when the demand is not necessarily high, right? You know, if you buy at the peak, then it's hard to gain any any value, right? You could lose value when you're buying things at the peak. So let's look at Bitcoin, for example. If you bought Bitcoin, go ahead. Were you gonna say
No,
something?
yes, before you get into some of the solutions and Bitcoin, I
Uh-huh.
just want to say, family, if you are enjoying this podcast by economist Dexter Lattimore, then please feel free to support him by sending him a donation to $Dex Lattimore. This is something I do for all of my guests because I appreciate them being on here. And I have people that have degrees and that world renowned speakers, and I should be paying them to come onto the show. But this is my way to contribute back for them, sharing their knowledge and experiences. He is an economist. He has a degree in economics, Pan-African studies, and a specialization in international business. He is mentored by Ambassador Atala Shabazz, who is the eldest daughter of Malcolm X. He has traveled with and spoken to and worked with many chiefs, presidents, queens, and kings. They have them still in Africa, all over the globe, actually. And he's done some work he hasn't even spoken of, as he has worked with certain chiefs. He's also worked with the mayor from the city that he came from in Louisville, Kentucky, the former mayors. And he has a wealth of knowledge, and he's sharing that information with us on the collapse of the empire called the United States Incorporated, and what we can do to prepare ourselves as we are experiencing that collapse. He is currently working on a book, and he'll talk about that maybe at another time. But if you want to support his work, then please feel free to do so. You can send a donation to $DexLattimore. He's also a very, very renowned musician. If you notice that name Lattimore, that name is there for a reason. It's because all the Lattimores are some type of entertainers, worldwide entertainers. And yes, excuse me, I was lucky enough to marry into that family. He is related to those Lattimores. And so that's it, family. Thank you so much for supporting us. I'm going to turn it back over to Dexter. So go ahead, Dexter.
Yes, I was mentioning you don't want to buy things at its peak, right?
Mm,
That's the reason why researching before you invest is critical, right? Don't just take people's word for it, right?
mm,
Don't just listen to a video, watch a couple of things on YouTube and on TV, and just invest blindly, right? That's what a lot of people have been doing with the cryptocurrencies.
mm,
And you can get lucky, but your luck can very quickly and easily run out, right? And if you don't know when to invest, where to invest, how to invest, and for how long to invest in certain products, you can lose a lot, right?
mm,
So again, right now, Bitcoin is down. Actually, I want to say it's down year over year. The prices that it started out as this year
yes.
compared to where it's at today.
Okay.
But most certainly, it's down from its peak, right? The high was 120,000, and right now I want to say it's last I checked it was about 89,000.
Mm,
So if
okay.
you bought at the peak, you would have lost all of your money, right? If you
Mm,
bought it when it was 120,000, you would have lost all your money. You also have to be skeptical of what you're investing in, because everything is not sound money. Everything is not necessarily a sound investment. So
mm,
Bitcoin, if you believe in Bitcoin, fine, no problem. But you do have to understand that Bitcoin is not the same as a hard asset, right? It's not the same as gold and silver. It's not even the same as a stock in a company, because the companies that we have stocks in generally have some type of value, right? The only value that Bitcoin has right now is the value of imagination. People believe that it's valuable, and so people are investing their money. But there
right.
is a term called revaluation, where people look at what they're investing in and say, hey, does this actually have value? And even
Mm,
if it has value, how much value does it actually have? Looking at the AI bubble is what they're calling it right now, the AI bubble.
mhm,
It started out as a wonderful idea, right? AI is going to shoot the world up, shoot the economy up, change the lives of everybody. And so trillions of dollars have been injected into these AI companies. But these companies are currently not producing trillions of dollars
mm,
in revenue. They're barely producing billions. So if they're getting trillions of dollars and only outputting a few billion, then that's a big
mm,
discrepancy. And
mhm,
so the shareholders start to call into question, how valuable is this company right now, not 10 years from now. And so we could easily see next year, from the start of next year, the quick fall of a lot of these stocks. However, that being said, we do have to realize that stocks do still have some value, right? So that's the AI stocks. We have stocks like Walmart, Nike, Kroger. They have stocks. They do produce, right? They produce goods. We don't produce nearly as many goods as we used to produce, right? We were an overproducer. We had a net export decades ago. Now we are a net importer of goods.
Okay.
So just to again reiterate, don't buy at the peak, right? Study any investment before you make the investment, because
Yeah.
you don't want to be in the position of blaming others when you lose whatever you invested in.
I remember when I was thinking about investing, because I was totally new to this in my late 40s when I was first thinking about this. I asked you, what should I invest in? And you told me, as an economist, Mom, I'm going to tell you what the things that you said you have to invest in, what you understand, right? That after you've done your
Mhm.
research, and what you can afford. Is there anything
Mhm.
else you want to say about that?
Absolutely. That's the. I agree with whoever said that. Is what I
That
say.
was you.
Oh, okay. Well, I agree.
You told me
So
that.
yes, um, yeah, no. Right now, gold is unaffordable to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't want to be discouraged because you cannot afford the price of gold today. You
Okay.
find the things that you can invest in, right? Looking at copper again, as was mentioned. There are things looking at asset stocks, right? Like gold stocks, silver stocks, silver mining companies, right? There are ways to invest. You have to research first. And then you find those things that you can afford. Because again, investing is has risk involved, right? In business, you're always dealing with risk. Business and investment is all about risk and risk management, right? You want to be able to decrease the possibility of risk, and you do that by having adequate information and then doing what you are able to afford, right? Investing in what you're able to afford. But again, there are several types of investment. The
Okay.
first being, I'm
Go ahead.
sorry,
I was just
the
going to
first,
say, you're getting into solutions now, how to deal with this
mhm.
collapse. Go ahead.
I was gonna say the first investment has to be investing in yourself,
Mm, okay.
right? If you had, you say you get all of this, accumulate all of this wealth, and say you do well with it, because of first you invest in yourself, your own information, your own knowledge, but you also invest in your children, because if you have all of this is what happened to the African American community 150 years ago,
Mm,
right? When we left the South,
okay.
a
Talk
lot
about
of the children during the Great Migration to the North,
it.
the children said, I don't want to live in the South. I don't care about my parents and grandparents' land.
Mm,
Sold the land for pennies, moved to Detroit, to New York, to Philly, to all of these wonderful northern cities and states because there were factory jobs there. Right. So they said, I want money. I don't care about the land. Well, clearly, they didn't understand the value of the land that their parents understood. So
okay.
again, you invest in yourself, your own knowledge and information, but you had better invest in your children and grandchildren's information because they could squander the wealth not understanding what they're doing. And
Mm,
then when it's gone, you can't turn around and say, hey, I want that back. No, it's mine now. You
mm,
can buy it for 10x the price that you sold it to me for, but you can't afford it now.
mm. So what happened when they sold the land and went to the North, and I mean, didn't they make money? They made money. So what was the
They
problem?
made money, and they also realized now they have rent to pay. Now you leave a certain area and you go to a more expensive area, right?
Mm,
And this is the reason why prices go up in cities, for example. If there's a rush to the city,
mm-hmm,
then you're still competing for the same amount of goods in the
mm,
city, right? So, for example, you move to Detroit, the population was 1 million, it shoots up to 3 million. Well, there weren't 3 million new homes built,
mm,
right? There were probably the same million homes that you moved to, whether it's apartments and houses or whatever. There's a fixed amount. So if the price of those apartments, for example, were $500, and everybody, the million people in the population were competing for those homes, the
mm-hmm,
moment more people comes, that is a scarcity, right? Because
mm,
it's a fixed amount of properties. So now the demand for those properties goes up. This is again the reason why I say understanding money and economics is important. We live in it, but we don't understand it. And so we
mm,
don't understand why rent goes up in certain cities at certain time periods, right? During the COVID situation, why was rent and mortgages going up, the cost of everything going up? Well, because there were a lot of foreign investors as
yep,
well as corporate investors like BlackRock, right? Buying up everything.
mm,
And once you buy up half of the houses, now the rest of the population is competing for the other half.
mm.
And so now there's a scarcity in supply and an abundance in demand, which means that the prices are going to go up. All that to say, invest in self, because you can have everything and be a fool, and a fool with money is still a fool.
Oh,